thank you so much for joining us for this third iteration of these information sessions about reopening the Ithaca City School District. We were together back in June, July, and now in August as we're presenting our thinking and our plans. And as we've said in each one of those sessions, the plans are somewhat dynamic as we receive different guidance every day. The information changes and we are doing our best to adapt and to meet the needs of our learners and our community during this challenging time. Again, thank you for joining. I'm Lou Bell Brown. I have the honor and privilege of serving as superintendent of schools. I'm here with my good friend, Deputy Superintendent Lily Talcott and Carrie Burke, Coordinator of Health and Wellness. And today we intend to share some information about where we are, take as many questions as we can, try to finish up around 8:30 and folks can get along with their days. We have new information today. If you've joined in previous sessions, we have new information to share, and we have plans that we wish to put in front of you that we've been working on this week. As you know, many of you have heard already, we've had to make adjustments to the previously announced reopening approach. We had hoped to open our schools in September, the school buildings, and we had asked folks to select whether or not they would be returning in person or virtually. And we have that data both for our families and for teachers. And we've had to make some adjustments because of a number of scenarios we'll share with you. The new plan, our Board of Education voted on the new academic calendar on Tuesday evening. And unfortunately, we had to make adjustments and shift some things, and I'll share why we needed to shift. But this new academic calendar looks like September 3rd, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th will be professional development days. Now, we've had professional development throughout the summer, but we have not had an opportunity to be with all staff. We haven't been with all of our staff since March 13th of last year. These 5 days are going to be devoted to all staff, and Ms. Talcott will speak to the topics that we plan to put in front of folks on those days. But it's important, we've heard the feedback from our families and our educators, and folks wish for us to focus our PD efforts on distance learning and many other items that are facing our school district at this time. The official start to the school year for all students, and for all students, it will begin in a virtual distance learning environment, will be September the 14th. Again, everyone starts on September the 14th and everyone will start in a virtual environment. We still hope to transition to in-person for those who've selected it by October the 15th, on October the 5th. On October the 5th, we plan to transition to in-person instruction for those who've selected it. Again, just to clarify, this was still questions last night in this session. Everyone starts on the 14th, and then we hope to transition to in-person learning on October the 5th. And much needs to happen between now and then. And I'll be talking to the community about what we need to do in order to make all of this happen. Why have we made this shift? We've heard from our community. We read every email, we read every Let's Talk submission. We've heard from folks about their wishes, and we're making adjustments according to those wishes and the data. Our data has revealed some things that are presenting some challenges for us as far as staffing and scheduling. We knew that would be a challenge. We knew it was bold and it would be a risk to offer the kind of choice to all families and to teachers that we did. And that's consistent with who we are as an organization. It has created some scheduling and staffing challenges that we're continuing to work through, and we'll need some additional time to do so. We know that, and we've heard this loud and clear from our community, the transitions that are taking place in our community, the mobility that exists here is significant right now. And folks are wishing for us to watch the data, monitor the data, to ensure that it's safe prior to reopening our school buildings. The HVAC systems, which we've guaranteed will be better than they've ever been. That's something we've heard loud and clear from our community. Our staff, we are making sure that's going to be up and running and very effective and very efficient. To do so, we are waiting on the same filters every other school district in the country is waiting on right now, those MERV 13 filters you may have heard or read about. There is a bit of a back order on those. While we think we could get them in before September, we want to give ourselves some additional time to get those filters in and installed. The similar delays to what we're experiencing with the MERV 13 filters, our architects and capital project managers or construction managers are having similar supply chain delays as we're attempting to finish a capital project that you may be seeing when you drive around. Some delays at Ithaca High School, some delays with the septic system at Caroline Elementary. So we have delays across our school district. To ensure that our buildings are safe, we need this additional time before resuming in-person instruction is going to be needed. But those are the reasons why. I've got many questions about, is one more important than the other? Any one of these reasons could have us delay our reopening of our buildings as far as in person. And any one of them could be a reason. There is no ranking order here. There is no one that is going to weigh more heavily than another. They're all significant issues that we're addressing. And they're pushing our start date for in-person out until October the 15th. Now with that, we wish to transition to talking about the reopening plans, professional development, what it will look like with distance learning, and what we're doing with health and safety. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Tauke. And please share your questions. We hope to get to questions here shortly. Thank you.
Good morning, folks. For those of you who just joined, my name is Lily Talcott, and I get to serve as your Deputy Superintendent for the Ithaca City School District. For those who have joined before, you may be familiar with our 4 pillars for reopening, which we're continuing to utilize to help us plan forward. We, of course, have some very specific updates in each of those areas to share with you this morning around culture, physical and environmental health and safety, social, emotional, and academic learning, and communication as well. Our first pillar of culture, we're working as a community to build this new culture where we're thinking collectively and acting individually. So some of you may be familiar with our top banner on our website. You can see hashtag reopen ICSD gallery. Click on that and this is the page that it leads you to. We're engaging in a community crowdsourced, essentially ad campaign, right, around mask wearing, really staying connected to school, and what we are all doing individually in order to stop the spread of COVID-19. So feel free to share those submissions, and more information, of course, can be found on our website there.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carrie Burke. I'm the Coordinator of Health Services and Wellness for the district. We have a few updates for you with respect to physical distancing, one of the key measures for preventing the spread of COVID-19. We're thinking about physical distancing across the school day. So beginning with travel to and from school, we have established practices to support distancing, including on our buses. Students will be seated, 1 student per bus seat. Those students who live in the same household may be seated together and will be encouraged to do so if that allows for additional students to ride the bus. If greater physical distancing is available on a school bus based on the number of students riding, we will certainly implement that, seating children every other seat or otherwise. And we will continue to plan for and implement staggered arrival and dismissal procedures. With respect to our buildings, as you've heard before, we have established that we have over 1 million square feet in the district across our buildings to support distancing. So in addition to our practices of cohorting, we're also in the process of procuring classroom furniture and other items to create a smaller footprint to allow for seamless and child-centered room configurations. And you can see images of those items here. Where we aren't able to support physical distancing, we're investing in polycarbonate barriers for school reception and office areas. With respect to hygiene, screening, and PPE, we've been successful in procuring needed resources to support health and safety. PPE, like those items you see here on the screen, masks, both for adults and children, gloves, gowns, much of it is already on site and has been inventoried, with additional quantities to be arriving in the next few weeks. In terms of hygiene, you may have seen one of the 30 outdoor sinks which have been distributed across our school sites. And in addition to those, we have both wall-mounted and personal use hand sanitizer available in our buildings. And lastly, on the right there is a screenshot. We recently contracted with one of our current vendors to utilize a web or mobile-based application for screening in the home setting. This tool is designed to support the parent or caregiver screening their child at home and will allow us to identify students who have not successfully been screened at home, who we then can follow up with upon their arrival to school. You've heard a lot, I'm sure, about HVAC and facilities. We are considering ventilation across all of our settings, including our buses. So for example, when temperatures are above 45 degrees Fahrenheit, our school buses will transport students with roof hatches and windows open to allow for additional airflow. On the screen, you can see the vendors that we are working with around our HVAC system, and they are supporting assessment, remediation, repair, and supporting procurement of materials like those MERV 13 filters you've heard so much about.
Transitioning to social, emotional, and academic learning, there are a number of features associated with distance learning that we're continuing to further define. Our wonderful educator task force that we're working very closely with, continuing even today. So I want to be clear about some of those enhancements and shifts that will make distance learning for all starting September 14th look different than it did in the spring. So we are going to start with really clearly defined schedules and ensuring that families, kids, educators, everyone knows exactly when those synchronous and asynchronous times will be, specifically the synchronous times. So those synchronous or live, real-time learning experiences are going to occur at every grade level. And we'll take a look at some possible schedules, some sample schedules in just a little bit here. And that asynchronous or anytime, really anywhere, learning will also continue. There will be much more synchronous learning time. Small groups and relationships and peer interactions are going to be key here. So we heard loud and clear from our educators, from our students and families, but that small group interaction, those connections with educators, those connections with other kids, and those connections just in general, building those relationships together is so key to making both distance learning meaningful and engaging, and for allowing students to learn best that academic and social emotional content. Students who have individualized education plans and 504 accommodation plans, as we define those schedules starting as early as next week, master educators of inclusion and case managers and others are going to be contacting families in order to set up what we're calling virtual learning plans, where we really go through with each individual family and kiddo what their plan outlines and the ways in which we're going to meet that plan based on the distance learning model. We're going to continue food service pickup, similar to what we did in the summer. So there's a number of sites throughout our school district where families can pick up shelf-stable meals. Technology and internet deployment is also going to be continuing. So our students in pre-K through first grade, we have a lease set up where we have iPads for all of those young people that will be deployed by September 14th. And students in grades 2nd through 12th will have access to Chromebooks and chargers. And we're working with families now in order to set up internet for those who need it. And lastly, materials delivery. You'll see in a little bit, we're not just talking about engaging in the digital sphere, we're also talking about engaging in physical hands-on materials as well. So what might a schedule look like? Now here is just an picture for those of you who weren't able to join the board meeting a couple of weeks ago. This is what it might actually physically look like, right? So if I'm a young kid, maybe I'm in second grade, I might hop on in the morning and engage in a morning meeting. It might look something like this with my teacher and my peers together working. Then I may transition, say I'm a secondary student. This is a screenshot of Canvas, which is our learning management system that we have just adopted, and we're engaged in professional development around that for educators. And we'll be rolling out more information and orientation essentially for our young people and for families as well. And Canvas is one-stop shopping for distance learning and frankly for in-person learning, right? So instead of 8 different classroom codes that kids and families have to remember, you log into Canvas and it can track attendance, assessments, student learning. Students can engage in their own assessment of their learning and their understanding in relationship to rubrics, post assignments. It communicates easily with families, right? So students may engage in asynchronous learning. They might do some reading, some research, and then create something based in Canvas. If I'm a younger learner, I may be engaging in asynchronous learning through online platforms like Zern, which is a game-based math program. And then I may engage as a kiddo with some physical materials. So this is an example of a technology project. Big shout out to David Buckner at DeWitt Middle School, technology department leader there. And students in the spring actually had these solar sprint car kits that they were able to build at home and then ultimately race. There may also be paper and pencil tasks, of course, art materials, science lab materials, et cetera, that students may be engaging with in asynchronous ways. And then I may wrap up my day with either another whole class meeting or some sort of small group instruction in order to differentiate and better meet my needs as a student. Well, now, say I'm a third grader, what might my day actually look like? Again, this is not precisely what every third grader is going to experience. We simply want to give you a picture of what it may look like. Again, I may wake up, engage in a meeting. Anything that you see in yellow here would be synchronous or real time, engage similar to this. And then I may have a small group math lesson with my teacher and maybe an aide and an assistant in order to help me through some specific math concepts. I may then transition to a math and science project where I'm doing some independent practice. Perhaps I'm creating something. And then at a little bit later in the day, there may be a whole group English language arts lesson, which then transitions into a small group lesson with me and maybe 5 other kids with my teacher. May then have lunch, and then PE, art, or music, which may be standalone, and it may be integrated within the regular class time, maybe synchronous or asynchronous. I may wrap up my day with English language arts and social studies projects. What might an 8th grade day look like? Our 8th grade, our middle schools are looking at creating this A day, B day schedule, similar to the high school, where every day starts with home base, and that's really the person they begin with, right? That crew, that cohort. Then I may transition into, academic classes, which will each be 1 hour long. They'll be synchronous. Again, anything in yellow is synchronous here. And each day will also offer office hours through a specific schedule. And on those Wednesday days, students will engage in asynchronous learning, hands-on learning, so things like labs, et cetera, will be offered during those times. And again, very specific office hours that will be offered in real time for students and families to access and ask questions and engage in further support. At the high school level, for those of you who were able to join a couple of weeks ago, we're continuing with the A day, B day schedule, again, supported through essentially having the entire day then scaled over 2 days. So it allows for longer periods of time for educators and students to develop those relationships and really dive deep into the content. So these longer chunks of time will be both synchronous and asynchronous. We're working through exactly what those office hours will look like, et cetera. And we're planning to continue based on this distance learning model at this time, right? Really offering all of those AP and honors courses that folks had questions about. Folks are engaged in professional development now, and as Dr. Brown said, we'll engage further in the fall as we begin in September. So our staff are learning about blended learning approaches and really how to utilize those technology tools in order to amplify learning and student engagement and peer interactions as well. Our other strands include anti-racist and culturally responsive teaching practices. So what are the ways in which we're validating and affirming our young people and also building, bridging toward that school culture, and also integrated social emotional learning. And that really allows us to take a look at the ways in which we hold our kids in these digital spaces, and frankly, how we support ourselves and each other as well. I think it's also important to note that we continue to plan for in-person instruction, right? October 5th, we are planning to open our physical spaces. So some of the things that we thought it would be important for you all to know is that we're doing things like partnering with the Ithaca Children's Garden to look at outdoor educational spaces, really clearly defining those and creating some infrastructure as need be, or shoring up infrastructure as we may need in order to provide outdoor teaching and learning spaces for our young people as much as possible, in addition to what Carrie shared earlier around our indoor spaces.
Communication is our last pillar and one of the most important. It remains ongoing and iterative. As you can see here in the month of August, we've been focusing our efforts on professional development and training for our staff. We've continued to conduct these information sessions. And I just want to highlight the Reopen ICSD team you see there on the bottom of the slide. We're forming a group of stakeholders, representatives from within and outside the district, to further support our reopening planning efforts, to attend to areas that maybe aren't discussed in the guidance, or those items that require the lens of our community, that reflect the values and culture of our school community. We appreciate your participation here today and in previous sessions. As always, we encourage you to reach out to us. You can connect with us by email or just reaching out to your building principal. You can use the Let's Talk app on our website, or call and leave us a message and we'll get back to you. It's important to stay connected as we move forward in time. We encourage you to visit the Reopen ICSD website, where you can find our plan published. You can find our FAQs, which continue to be updated, and other materials that have been referenced in today's conversation.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Lily. A lot of questions coming in, and we're going to transition to the lightning round and try to get to as many as we can. Thank you all for sharing so much with us. Many questions about data and the data from our survey, and what will we do with some of the staffing issues. So Ms. Talcott, I'm going to ask you to talk about staffing and what our plans are there, but I'll share the data here for folks. And this was a snapshot in time. This data has changed quite a bit over the last week as folks are changing their minds, both staff and families. Back on the 7th of August, when we pulled the data initially, in-person learning for the families who wish to have in-person, it was around 56%. Distance learning was around 42%. And then we had some other scenarios in there. As far as our teachers, we had about 32% choose to be in person, and distance learning, folks choosing to be virtual, around 68% or so. And then we have some other scenarios in there as well. So yeah, those numbers are, in some ways they were surprising, and in some ways they're changing. and we need to make some adjustments in order to make all of this work to those numbers. So Ms. Talk, you want to talk about what we're thinking about doing with regards to staffing?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So as Carrie alluded to earlier, we are looking at establishing this Reopen ICSD team to look at that data district-wide and essentially create these particular scenarios that will work based on, frankly, the wishes and requests that we have in place. So we of course have a number of scenarios, additional scenarios that we've designed for that team to run through and critique and shift and essentially create and communicate out to our community based on the number of staff who are willing and frankly able to come back, right? We know that there are a number of folks who have pre-existing conditions and frankly need remote work, and they can complete their job responsibilities remotely, which is great. So we're working with folks on that, and our union leadership, of course, has been incredibly collaborative, and we want to continue to work with them there. And based on the folks who, you know, based on the student information that we have. So, you know, folks are asking if we're going to ask families again. Yes, very likely we're going to need to engage with our families again based on the recommendations from that Reopen ICSD team.
Thank you, Ms. Talcott. Carrie, can you talk about testing and why we are not testing all young people and all staff members, surveillance testing?
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Yes, I'd be happy to. So the CDC does not recommend universal or surveillance testing of students and staff. Testing in the school setting poses a number of considerations and challenges, including infrastructure and resources unable to do routine testing, as well as practical considerations related to students. For example, requiring we need parental consent to test any student. In addition to disruptions in the educational environment, because testing, of course, takes time. It's important to note that schools actually do play a role in identifying individuals who have symptoms of COVID-19 or of known exposures, and then connecting them to providers or the health department who is responsible for determining who is eligible for testing. We also have a responsibility to ensure that our staff are aware of the options available to them with respect to testing. And so we've worked closely with the Tompkins County Health Department and Cayuga Medical Center, and we'll have information readily available about who is eligible for testing and how to access testing. In addition to that, we are working with Cayuga Medical Center. Our daily screening that will be required of staff will be done in partnership with the medical center. So it will streamline and improve access to a consultation by a medical provider, as well as testing, which is being conducted at Ithaca Mall by Cayuga Medical Center. So testing is important, but testing alone is really insufficient to combat the spread of this virus. We here in the school district are focusing our efforts on implementing multiple prevention and mitigation strategies, many of which we've discussed here and elsewhere, which include screening at home, promoting behaviors that reduce spread like respiratory and hand hygiene, and maintaining healthy environments and operations, and preparing for when someone may be test positive for the virus.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Child care, Ms. Talcott. Can you talk about child care and what we're thinking about doing?
Yes, I will be very honest here. I wish I had an answer right at this moment, and I frankly don't. What I can tell you is that we are collaborating and in conversation to try to find some solutions. We know that, and this weighs very heavily on our hearts, that families and our kids really need us to be open in person, because they need to go to work, right? And they need, although we are not a child care facility, we recognize the need to have young people in our spaces safely throughout the day. So the conversations with folks at the county level and throughout are continuing. We're trying to find some creative solutions, large scale, small scale. And I wish I could tell you exactly what's going to happen at this moment, and I simply can't this time. We're still trying to figure some stuff out.
Ongoing. The questions coming up, what can we do as a community to make sure October the 5th is a start date for in-person learning? What I've been saying to folks, please tune into our Board of Education meeting on Tuesday. We're going to have folks from Cornell University come. Yes, I've referenced mobility and transition in our community. And that's bigger than just Cornell, but you know, Cornell is going to play a big part of this, and they have plans to help us make that October the 5th date as well. So I would ask folks to tune in on Tuesday, as they're going to be sharing information about what they're doing there. We'll also be bringing in folks in the medical community to talk about what we're doing on the health, with health in our community, what the current data shows. We're going to be bringing in Frank Krupa and Jason Molina throughout this process, as well as you know, who are representing the county, to share their thinking. As a community, we need to define this term safety, and what does it mean to be safe? You know, I've heard it all from in 0 cases is safe here, and us being able to manage the cases that we do find here is safety. So we are going to come up with a common mental model and a definition for what it means to be safe in our spaces. When I look at our data, when I read my emails, there are a lot of folks in our community who don't feel safe. We need to talk about this and grapple with it and come up with a common mental model for what it's going to mean to be safe in this community. So yeah, I would say we need to come up with that definition. We also need, you know, we have a major holiday coming up, a weekend. And, you know, what we've seen in this community is that there have been spikes when there have been holiday weekends. A spike in this community at any point over the next 3 or 4 weeks won't be good as far as us reopening our schools. So it's going to be up to us all to be vigilant and to, you know, to do what we need to do to mitigate the spread of this deadly virus. So much can be done over the coming weeks, including education of what is happening and what it means to be safe here, and also continuing to do what we've done well, which is to physically distance, wear our face mask, and keep this thing going in the right direction. And with that, I see we're running out of time here, and we have a couple of others. Ms. Talkett, just quickly, Canvas versus School Tool. Can you explain to folks the difference between the two, and if Canvas is replacing our School Tool system?
Good question. Canvas is a learning management system that is really focused on teaching and learning. So those materials, those instructions, information about assignments, specific student assessments, so not just numerical grades, will come through Canvas. Additionally, so families, kids, staff have access to Canvas. So that means that kids are logging into Canvas, right? So they're seeing their assignments there. And it can frankly generate things like reports around student login times for families as well. So School Tool is really just it's a student management system. So it holds and houses, frankly, flat information, right? And teachers can input information, and school-based staff can input information, but it's frankly more static, whereas Canvas is more of a two-way communication tool for teaching, learning, and assessment.
Thank you, Ms. Talkett. We're having another session today at noon. Each one of these sessions, we get different questions and we answer different questions. So if you have time today, log back in at noon to hear more information about this. You can always use our Let's Talk portal and send your questions there, or send myself, Ms. Talkett, an email, and we will do our best to get back to you. We read every comment and every question, and we're learning together, y'all, and we're in this thing together. So again, thank you so much for joining this morning, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you.